I occasionally turn up in some rather strange locations at the start of some of my videos, and today's location is particularly strange. In fact, I think it's a first. It's an old stable or a shelter used for horses in a small paddock close to Ollerton. It's not been used for a number of years, and of course lots of material has accumulated, and in the corner of this particular old shelter there's an accumulation of hay and straw. That's all very dry, and so it could contain something interesting. Of course, I'm hoping that the sample that I take may hold a false scorpion or two, and maybe a different species, but we'll see. First of all, we need a sample. Trying to get some of the stuff that clings together a little bit more. That, as with manure, where it's in layers, that's where anything false scorpion like may be lurking. Job done. Well, it's a couple of days later from when I took the sample from that horse shelter near to Ollerton. The bag has been tied securely so nothing can escape, nothing can get in. And here is our sample. It's very dry, this sample. I'm going to try not to rustle the carry bag too much because I know how irritating it can be. Just a case breaking up the larger lumps. I always give them a tap. This is quite solid, this, there may well not be much in the way of false scorpions in this particular bit, but it's the other stuff I just like to loosen. So other people work differently. Others like to just sieve in the field. I don't. I like to bring my stuff home. It means I can sit in the comfort of my own home, do this at my leisure, and have a drink at the same time, maybe even listen to music while I'm sorting through it. Can be a little bit soul destroying sometimes if you're going through handful after handful after handful and not finding anything. And I can tell you that there's not a deal of movement in this at first hand. Or maybe not. That's amazing. The reason it's amazing is because within this first handful of the more solid material, there are 3, possibly 4 or more false scorpions in it. And they look interesting. Time to get one potted up. Well, here's one specimen under a microscope. I need to do this. I need to look at it under the microscope in order to determine the identity of this species, because there are two candidates, both Allokernes. One is wider eye and the other is power eye. Now, I've seen Allokernes wider eye on a number of occasions, and that's usually found under tree bark, under loose bark. Allokernes power eye is a species of the type of habitat that this sample was taken from, of barn or horse shelter, litter or refuse. This is the ideal location, and as it turns out, this is Allokernes powelli. The differences are minute, can't be seen by eye. You need to have a specimen under the microscope, but this fits all the criteria of powelli, even down to the distal obtuseta on tarsus 4, which means it has a long hair. Wider eye doesn't have that long hair. A big result, because Allokernes powelli is not, or has not previously been known from Nottinghamshire. You see what I mean about you need to wait for these to break cover and move, because especially on this kind of material, if you're sorting through it, they are absolute swines to see. But once they get into gear and start trundling about, they become more obvious. A little bit of patience will often reveal these in any kind of sample. But this is Nottinghamshire's first record of Allokernes powelli. Visually, it looks the same as Allokernes wider eye, but it isn't. I've checked and rechecked with a couple of identification keys, and this has all the criteria, as I mentioned, to be Allokernes powelli. And here we've got two. The second one has come out from underneath that straw. I just love the way these move. They're very reactive. The brush there is not really touching that one, but they are just wonderful little invertebrates. And to think that these kind of things are in people's garden compost heaps, or maybe in an old dusty corner of a shed. All sorts of habitats usually has a false scorpion in it somewhere, and it's great that we now have powelli on the Nottinghamshire list. There's an indication of how difficult they are and how you have to wait for that movement, and then out they come. They're just great little things. And powelli is a species of, say, barns or animal pens and all sorts of areas where bedding will accumulate. They have turned up in old bird nests, and I believe even in hollow trees. It's important to key these out and key them out properly. Some you can do visually okay, but some of the more difficult species to identify, you need a key. I'm just thinning out another handful. I've gone down well past halfway in the sample, and I've had no more false scorpions at all. And that's quite amazing and unusual, because normally you have to get so far into a sample or down a sample before you get your first false scorpion. And there's actually been a surprisingly small number of invertebrates here. There's one very tiny linephid spider in here. And there's just a case of waiting for something to show itself. Quite often when you put a handful of material into your tray and you spread it around like this, nothing appears, and then all of a sudden, hopefully a false scorpion trundles out from under cover, comes into one of the more open areas, and you see that bit of movement and success. And I certainly had success in the first handful here, but then nothing since. I'll only give it 3 or 4 minutes or so, because usually by then whatever's in here has made its presence known. Well, here's one of the largest of the specimens that I've got out of this sample. It's just in this top of a container here. Very different animal indeed. In similar samples to this grass and hay material, before I've had Salaphokernes scorpioides. But the important thing is it's another record. It's a new grid square, and that's what a lot of this is about. Documenting and recording the false scorpions of Nottinghamshire, which are grossly under-recorded. I have all that I know of the records from Nottinghamshire listed on the website, and it might appear that we have a lot, but we don't. The whole new world out there for people interested in these fascinating invertebrates. Just look at that.